So we are, 5-7 weeks out now before we see the return of Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball, and Derrick Jones Jr. I feel like all of us Bulls fans are just counting down the days for these guys to return. I think Caruso is actually slated to come back the soonest based on the time of his surgery anyway, since Lonzo's surgery didn't happen until this past Friday, which his 6 to 8 week timetable started at that point from his surgery. But anyway, it's obviously going to be another one of those weeks where the Bulls are going to be without these guys, and other guys are going to need to step up to fill that void. All of that being said, though, this week is going to prove to be another opportunity for the Bulls to potentially stack wins against some of the lower tier teams in the league. The Bulls have all seen these teams already that they're going to be facing off this week, which you kind of expect at this stage in the season, but they'll kick off their week tomorrow against the worst team in the league in the Orlando Magic, then play the Raptors on Thursday in Toronto, a back-to-back on Friday against the Pacers, and then the Bulls will close out the week on Sunday against the Philadelphia 76ers, the Sixers being the toughest matchup that the Bulls will have this week. So in today's video, we'll be going through these games, things to be looking out for, keys to each game, and my predictions for the week. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, what's crazy for the Bulls is that despite all their injury woes, all of the bouts with COVID, what was a rough month accompanied by a lot of losses, the Bulls are still actually second in the East and only a half game back behind the Miami Heat for that top spot. Granted, the East race is pretty tight right now, with the Bulls only being 2 games ahead of the 6th spot, which, believe it or not, is where the Brooklyn Nets sit after falling in the standings due to their own issues with injuries, more specifically the injury to Kevin Durant. But anyway, the point is, the Bulls are still in a good position in the Eastern Conference standings, which makes it that much more important to win these games against bad teams while they weather the storm until their players get back. So let's start with tomorrow's game against the Magic. Now, I think a game we would all like to forget that happened just recently was when the Bulls had that embarrassing loss to the Magic in Orlando, where they shot the ball horribly and only had 10 assists as a team in that game. Granted, the Bulls were even more depleted at that time without Zach Lavine and Javonte Green, in addition to the players we currently have out. The Magic are on a 2-game winning streak, and I think we all recognize that their team, that they have a lot of young talent between the Wagner brothers, Wendell Carter Jr., Cole Anthony, and Jalen Suggs, but again, they're still the worst team in the NBA and incredibly inexperienced, which their inexperience has led them to not be able to close out a lot of games as a result. So despite the talent that they have, despite the fact that they just beat the Bulls in one of the Bulls' worst losses of the season, the Bulls have to win this game. No excuses. Like, especially now with Lavine and Javonte Green being back, this is a game you cannot lose. I don't care if you're without your 2 best defenders. This is a tanking, rebuilding team. Now, when the Bulls have played the Magic in their first 2 games, Cole Anthony was out of the lineup, and I still think that he's arguably their best player. So that's really going to be the biggest assignment for the Bulls, is staying on Anthony, making sure he doesn't get hot. And I imagine, especially with Ayo now really taking over that starting point guard role with Lonzo Ball being out, he's going to be tasked with guarding Anthony, which is the right call since Ayo is probably our best defender at the moment. And for God's sakes, Vucevic, you cannot let Wendell Carter Jr. outplay you. Like, I'm still happy with the Vucevic trade overall, because ultimately, if we don't get Vuce, we may not get DeRozan. But you can't make Wendell Carter Jr. get the best of you again. I want to see Vuce crashing the boards over Wendell and working Wendell in the paint, because lately, going to Vuce in the post has worked out well for the Bulls. And Jesus, guys, don't let Mo Wagner look like an all-star out there like we did the last go-around. Oh, and guard the perimeter. That actually applies to all of these games, because you've probably noticed the biggest issue with the Bulls right now are the sheer number of threes they have allowed their opponents to put up. And against poor three-point shooting teams, those teams are having their best nights from deep against the Bulls. So that needs to stop. Then the Bulls will face off against the Raptors on Thursday. We did also just see the Raptors last week, but this time it will be in Toronto. And the Bulls played well in that game. Again, defense wasn't great, but we need to just kind of come to expect that at this point until the core defenders are back in the roster. That being said, though, the Raptors were without Fred VanVleet in that game, and he has since returned, and of course the Raptors did just beat the Heat. So they're really rolling right now compared to where they were at the start of the season. VanVleet likely another assignment for Ayo, and we're going to need Ayo to really be fully locked in on the defensive end. VanVleet is averaging 21.7 points per game and 7 assists. I would not be surprised if he's an all-star this year. Van Fleet has also been a solid defender as well. And really the biggest struggle for the Bulls in this game, at least what we saw in the last game, was when they started crumbling towards the end of it, was the Raptors' size and length. You got Siakam, OG Anunoby, Chris Boucher, Scottie Barnes, Precious Achiuwa. Like, all of these guys were incredibly active and scrappy the last time these two teams met. And the Bulls didn't have an answer for the Raptors because of that, just based on how small they are. And we know Vucevic, despite his size, isn't as athletic and active as the guys I just mentioned in terms of skying for rebounds and protecting the rim. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for the Bulls, is finding ways to limit the physicality of the Raptors down low, pushing the pace and keeping up their speed in transition. Again, knowing that the Raptors are going to be fully healthy this go around, which hasn't been the case every time the Bulls have seen the Raptors this season. It was either Siakam, Anunoby, or Van Fleet who have been out in each of the prior matchups. Then it'll be a back-to-back where the Bulls will travel to Indy to take on the Pacers. Now, the Pacers are always going to be a tough matchup for the Bulls. Despite the Pacers having a record of 18-33, they're on their way to rebuilding by potentially pulling some moves on trades. And the reason it's a challenging matchup is because of the size that the Pacers have down low with Miles Turner and Sabonis. Granted, Miles Turner is not going to be in the lineup this go around, but like, the Bulls really don't have an answer for Sabonis on defense, although it will help a lot to have Javonte Green back in this one to guard Sabonis, even though this mismatch in size is still going to be an issue. Now, I believe Malcolm Brogdon is also still out, at least at the time of this recording anyway, which helps because he's another added scoring threat for the Pacers. But even Brogdon aside, Caris LeVert is playing much better basketball. The rookie Chris Duarte has been great for them this season. Justin Holiday always ends up showing out well against the Bulls, so it's not like this is going to be a cakewalk for the Bulls despite the Pacers' subpar record this season. But again, it's still a game they need to win, especially when they're without Miles Turner and you're going against a team that is below 500. Then finally, the Bulls will close out the week against the Sixers, and you guys probably know by now, the Sixers, simply put, they have the Bulls' number. I believe Joel Embiid, like, in his entire NBA career, has never lost to the Bulls. He's won something like 8 or 9 games against us. Embiid, who has always been incredible of a player, is having arguably the best stretch of his career right now and is an MVP frontrunner with the kind of performance that he's been putting on. He's averaging 29.1 points per game, 10.8 rebounds, 4.4 assists, and 1.5 blocks. He's on pace to finish with the highest PER in league history. The dude is just that good. And unlike the last 2 games in which the Bulls played the Sixers earlier this season, which the Bulls lost in both of those, Tobias Harris is going to be available. And of course, the Sixers still have Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle. They've got Drummond coming off the bench, who's been playing well for them, which gives the Bulls additional problems down low. Like, this is going to be the Bulls' hardest game of the week, which isn't a surprise, and it's going to be a big test for the Bulls because, yet again, this is an Eastern Conference foe that you could potentially see in the playoffs. I've said before, the 3 teams I'm the most worried about in a playoff series for the Bulls are the Bucks, the Nets, and the Sixers, because in each of those series, the opposing team is going to have the best player on the court. You might not like me saying that, but DeRozan and Lavine are not better than Giannis, Kevin Durant, and Joel Embiid. So anyway, really the keys for this game is the Bulls are going to need the most they can possibly get from Lavine and DeRozan, because I'm not expecting a ton from Vucevic. Like, yes, ideally I would just say Vucevic needs to step up and be a big body to fight against Embiid, but I'm going to be a realist. It's probably not going to happen. But if DeMar and Lavine can really just outwork guys like Seth Curry and Tobias Harris on offense, by being smart with their shot selection, efficient from the mid-range, and taking care of the ball, they have to limit their turnovers because the Sixers are one of the best teams in scoring in transition off turnovers. It's what makes them such a good defensive team. If they can do that, then maybe the Bulls have a shot at winning this one. They will be at home, which will be nice. Hopefully the crowd will be into it and giving the Bulls some of that confidence and momentum needed. But I'll be honest, anytime the Bulls are going up against Joel Embiid, I'm never going to be too confident, especially when he's playing some of the best basketball of his career right now. Now, as far as my predictions in this one, I mean, I'm still not as optimistic as I'd like to be. And a lot of that is because the Bulls they're just not the same team without guys like Lonzo and Caruso. And that also extends to Derrick Jones Jr. If I had to guess, I'd say the Bulls go 2-2, losing to the Raptors and Sixers. I think the Raptors are going to give the Bulls problems like they did the last time around, but even more so this time because they have an added scoring piece, their best scorer in Fred VanVleet, who wasn't available last week. And then for the Sixers, I just can't see the Bulls winning this one without their best defenders, and especially with the way that Embiid has been playing like recently. The Bulls better beat the Magic. I don't think I can take another loss to a team like the Orlando Magic. That would be inexcusable, and I think the Bulls can beat the Pacers, even if they don't match up well against them, especially since Miles Turner is not going to be in the lineup. But I want to know what your guys' predictions are, though. How do you think the Bulls will do this week against these teams? Let me know in the comments. I'll have a live chat for all these games ahead, so feel free to join those if you would like. As always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.